Today we're going to be going over machete safety. There are two types of people that generally cut themselves with a machete. The first is beginners, and the second are the experts. Machetes can be a great tool. These are not generally a land clearing tool, but a when you're a bushwhacking tool, if you're trying to clear a trail, or if you're working in a tight spot and you need to be able to remove some of the things around you, this is a great tool. If you're clearing brush on your land, I highly would suggest you use a brush axe where you have a little more room to get a swing and the blade is further away from you. Machetes are dangerous, and even people who use them on a regular basis, cut themselves often. And if you have ever cut yourself with a machete, it is really not a fun experience. The best thing you can do, the safest a machete is when it's sheathed, and most of them have some way of buckling it in. That's the safest a machete is. Once it's out, it's no longer safe. But obviously if you're using it, you've got it out. And so we're going to go over some tips for using machete to be a little safer for yourself and those around you. The number one safety tip is do not use a machete when other people are around you, even from myself to the distance of the camera, which is maybe 5 feet. If that person makes one move while you're swinging your machete, you could take off somebody else's hand or fingers, and I can tell you that there is probably the worst sound in the world is the scream of somebody else as their hand or fingers hit the floor in front of you. So do not use a machete around other people. That's safety tip number one. Safety tip number two is when you're using the machete, you don't want to swing across your body like this. A lot of people think that they're Indiana Jones and they're going through the brush and they're just whacking like this. This is not the correct way of using a machete. Machetes, if they do not hit a branch correctly, they can bounce off. And I can tell you from experience, I went in to cut a branch, I hit the branch, and instead of the machete going into the branch, it ricocheted and went boom, straight down onto my knee. And on my machete, there's actually, and I'll try and show you here, there's a chip on the blade of my machete from where it hit my kneecap. So it was pretty serious injury, and that happened because I was swinging at branches that were in front of me. When you're using machete, you always want to swing out from your body. So if I'm cutting a branch out this way, I'm swinging out and away. And if I'm going to cut a branch on this side, out and away. The other thing when you're using machete is if you look at my cuts, they are all at an angle. And this is because the best way the machete cuts is when you're cutting at about a 45-degree angle. If you cut straight on, it's not going to go through what you're cutting, and that's when it's going to bounce off. Anytime a machete bounces off something at full swing, that's when you run the risk of injury. So a machete will generally take something out about this size with a single swing if you hit it correctly at a 45-degree angle. You can see my angle there, and it didn't really take a whole lot to cut this. So keep that in mind too. When you're out swinging a machete, you really don't have to have a tight grip on it and swinging it like a madman. That's actually when accidents are more prone to happen, is when people are really gripped down and they're just swinging it. What happens is you get tired quickly, and when you get tired, you don't think, you start swinging across your body, and inevitably you're going to end up swinging this machete into your body somewhere if you're swinging it across. Anytime you swing it across something, it's going to ricochet at some point, and that ricochet, all the momentum is going right into your body. So when you're cutting out away from your body, if it ricochets, it's not going to come into your body. And the other thing, when you're cutting, like I said, you don't need to have a firm grip and chop at it. What you actually want to do is most of your grip is with these first two fingers and your thumb, and you want to have kind of a rocking motion with the machete, because the real power of the machete is with that kind of just that pop right there. And so when you do that, you can take out a branch. It's pretty good sized with very little effort. And by using very little effort to cut your branches, you're not going to tire yourself out as quickly, your hand's not going to get blistered as bad, and you're going to maintain better control over the machete. And that sounds a little weird, but trust me, practice it. Practice just putting most of your control with these first three fingers, letting these fingers kind of flop it a little bit, and just practice that whipping motion with the machete. You can cut something with a shorter swing, which obviously the more you're in full swing, the greater a chance you have of really injuring yourself or somebody else. But when you have that controlled kind of just short swing, you'll be able to cut things, and you're not just swinging it out of control. The first tip was basically when it's safest when it's sheathed. Next tip is not to swing the machete when somebody else is even within, I would say, 5 to 10 meters of yourself, because you need time to be aware of them entering your space. And then the next tip is to, when you chop, it's using your fingers and using the whipping motion of the machete to help cut the branches instead of a full-out swing with a tight grip on it, because it's gonna tire you out. You're gonna swing it wrong, and eventually you will cut yourself. The main tip of using a machete is not to walk through the brush cutting like this. Anytime that you're swinging a blade like that across in front of you, if I were to hit a branch wrong at any of those points, the machete has nowhere to go but into me. And I can tell you from experience, and my blade has the dent to prove it, that a machete will quickly go through your skin all the way down to your bone. These are sharp instruments, and that is probably the final safety tip, is that a sharp machete is a safe machete. If you're out cutting with a dull machete, number one, it's no different than trying to cut something with the back of the blade. It's going to bounce, and if it bounces, it's going to hurt somebody. You want the machete to be able to go through what you're cutting when you're cutting it at that 45-degree angle, and a sharp machete will penetrate if it's cut at the 45-degree angle. A dull machete may ricochet and bounce, and that's when accidents happen. So a sharp machete is a safe machete. We'll go over sharpening these in a future video. Obviously, it's a little more difficult than sharpening a pocket knife because it's a much larger blade, but you should have a stick sharpener, and we'll show you some techniques when you're out in the field just to try and keep this blade nice and sharp. Another thing when choosing machete is going back to the whole safety thing and getting tired while you're using it. And a lot of times when you're using the machete, you're out for a good part of the day trying to clear an area. It helps to have a machete that is lighter in weight. The lighter weight machetes aren't going to tire you out as quickly. If you're a beginner user of machete, it's better to use a machete that is not too long. This is not a very long machete, but it's a great machete. It's a very easy machete to use. The longer the machete, it's true you can, get a good whack on a bush and take something out, but the longer the blade, the more likely you are to cut yourself or somebody else. And especially when you're cutting down low to the ground, more accidents tend to happen with people with longer machetes. The other thing to keep in mind with the weight is that heavier machetes are going to require more effort and swinging. Your arm is going to get tired faster, and a tired arm ultimately leads to accidents.